Mom, I said back up. Right now, I am 72. Baby, my knees do not move that fast. Let me call my son Darius Baines, baby. It is me. They shoved a 72-year-old churchwoman to the ground and thought it was over, until her son, a quiet man with a military past, showed up and turned the whole city upside down. Loretta Baines was not in a rush. She had just said her goodbyes to the women's group at Mount Olive Baptist Church, the same church she had been attending every Sunday for 43 years. Her friend Thelma Harper was supposed to drive her home like usual. Loretta stood just outside the small brick building wearing her beige Sunday hat and holding a thin brown cane in one hand and her Bible in the other. The air still held that thick southern heat. Even in late September, she spotted blue and red lights reflecting off the nearby chain-link fence. 2 squad cars had pulled over a beat-up sedan about 40 feet from the church lot. She did not pay it much mind, figured it was just another traffic stop, but then she heard yelling, not from the driver, but from the officers. She turned her head. Slowly, she was not nosy, just concerned. One of the officers, a young white man with a thin frame, was giving conflicting instructions. Hands out the window, he barked. Then, not 5 seconds later, "Get out of the car, now!" The young man in the car, barely more than a teenager, froze. His hands trembled. A few members from the church were watching too. No one stepped closer. Everyone knew how quickly things could go. "Sideways these days," Loretta called out. "Y'all be careful now," like a mother would, her voice soft but audible. That was it, that was all she said. But then she felt the attention shift. One of the officers, not the one yelling, turned around and started walking toward her. "You need to back up, Mom," he said, motioning with his hand. "I am just standing by the church steps," Loretta replied, barely moving. "Ain't crossing no line." The officer told her again to move back, this time more firmly, but she did not think she needed to. He was not near the scene, and she was clearly no threat. The church steps had always been a place of safety, not suspicion. He took another step toward her. "I said back up, Maham. I am 72 years old, son." "My knees do not back up that fast," she said. With a small smile, still trying to de-escalate without even realizing it. Then it happened fast, too fast. The officer reached for her cane. "You need to move now." "I am moving, child." He yanked the cane before she could finish. Loretta stumbled. Her right foot gave out on the pavement, and her whole body followed. She fell hard, her hat rolled off her. Bible slapped the concrete and her head. Her head cracked against the curb with a sound that made every witness stop breathing for a second. The footage is not shaky, it is heartbreakingly steady. You can clearly see Loretta lying there motionless, one hand twitching as if she is trying to collect herself before her body lets her. You hear someone scream, "Why did y'all do that? She did not do nothing." Another voice says, "Call an ambulance." But what stands out most in the footage is not the fall, or the gasps, or the sound of sirens in the distance. It is what Loretta says next. Her voice is low, raspy, but it cuts through the chaos like a blade. She says, "Let me make one call." One of the officers tries to talk over her, but she repeats it. "Let me call my son." They let her, probably figured it would not matter. Probably thought she did not have anyone who could do much about it. She dialed one number, no contacts, no voice commands, just muscle memory. He picked up on the second ring. She said his name once, that is all, and everything started changing. But what? No one on that scene knew was who Loretta's son really was. Darius Baines answered the phone like he always did when his mother called. "Hey, Ma," no one else heard what she said. But whatever it was, it turned the air inside his house. Still the fan kept spinning overhead, but Darius did not move for 5 seconds, just stood there in that small home he had built on 2 acres outside Huntsville, Alabama, staring out the window with a look that had not crossed his face in years. He did not ask questions, did not need to. He just said, "All right," and hung up. In the next 10 minutes, he changed shirts, pulled a battered duffel from the back of his closet, and tossed in only the things that mattered. 2 phones, a USB drive, and a worn-out folder sealed in plastic. He did not pack clothes by the time his neighbor, an older man named Chuck Dawson, who ran the scrapyard down the road, waved from his porch. Darius was already in his truck heading east on the interstate. Nobody in town knew much about Darius. He had been back a few years, real quiet, helped fix fences. When storms hit, donated anonymously to the middle school's broken water system, volunteered with the VFW when they asked. But nobody had ever really asked about his past. They just respected the silence. What they did not know was that Darius Baines had not just served. He had been deployed 12 times across 4 continents. He had spoken languages. Most Americans had never heard he had sat in rooms where no names were used, only nods, missions with no paper trail, clean extractions, silent endings. He had left all that behind when his father passed, moved back to be closer to Loretta. Thought maybe he could live like a normal man, but now that life was back in his rear-view mirror, he crossed into the state just after 11 p.m. and did not stop for gas until he was almost in Tuscaloosa. When he got back on the road, he made one call, not to a friend, not to a family member, to a number labeled Auric. A gravely voice answered, "No." "Hello, just breathing. I need you to pull a badge number." Darius Baines said. A pause which City Birmingham PD officer on scene at a traffic stop outside St. Mark Baptist Church. Tonight, he laid hands on Loretta. Another pause time frame between 6 and 7. Name's not on the tape, but he is wearing badge 7082. I will send it in an hour. Not enough, I need everything. Record priors, complaint, history. Send it to my private inbox. Encrypted, understood, no goodbye, just click by. The time Darius crossed into Mississippi, the message had already come through. Officer Alan Denton, rookie, 2 years on the force, transferred from another department after a misconduct investigation that had been quietly closed without charges. Darius did not show emotion. He just filed the info where it belonged in the growing list of names. At 3:30 a.m., he pulled into the parking lot of the same hospital Loretta had been taken to. He did not head for the ER entrance. He walked straight through the side doors by the loading dock. He knew they would not stop him. The night nurse glanced up. Darius spoke without raising his voice. "Loretta Baines, where is she? She is stable room 312 West Wing," but he was already moving when he opened the door to her room. Loretta was awake. Her left temple had a thick white bandage. She had an IV in one arm, her cane leaning beside the bed, but her eyes were clear, tired but steady. "Hey, baby," she said softly. He walked over and kissed her on the forehead, then pulled the chair close and sat down without saying a word for a minute. "You all right?" he finally asked. She nodded slowly. "Could have been worse." He took her hand gently. "I am going to fix this." Loretta did not smile. She did not argue either. "You sure?" she asked already. Knowing the answer, Darius just said. "Yes, Mom," she sighed, closed her eyes for a few seconds, then opened them again. "I did not raise you for vengeance." I know he said this, ain't that she did not press. She did not have to." He stayed with her until sunrise. But by the time the sun hit the blinds, Darius had already planned his first move. By 7:00, Darius stood back where it all happened on the edge of the church parking lot near the cracked concrete where Loretta's hat had landed. He did not need to imagine it. He had already watched the video 6 times on the way over. Angles, body positions, officer behavior. He had broken down every frame like a mission briefing. The pastor, Reverend Carl Monroe, came out with a cup of black coffee and handed it to him. Without a word, they knew each other from years ago, Not close, but close enough. She is still resting? The Reverend asked quietly. Yeah, Darius replied, eyes scanning the scene. She said you tried to step in. I tried. They told me to step back or be arrested. Said I was interfering with a lawful stop. Darius sipped his coffee, then looked over at the camera mounted on a crooked utility pole across the street. You think that thing works? Reverend Munro gave a bitter laugh, only when they wanted to. I am going to find out. He walked away before the Reverend could say anything else. He drove straight to the Birmingham Police Department. South Precinct, a small red brick building tucked between a pawn shop and an auto parts store. He walked in wearing jeans, an old grey shirt, and the kind of stillness that made people nervous without knowing why. The officer behind the desk looked up. Can I help you? Yes, I need to speak to whoever is in charge of the Denton incident last night. The officer blinked. Excuse me, Alan. Denton badge 7682. He was involved in a use of force case outside St. Mark Baptist Church, sir. I am not sure. I am not here to argue. I am here to speak to the watch commander. I can take your name and number. Darius leaned forward slightly. Or you can get him. Now, the young officer hesitated, then picked up the phone. 10 minutes later, Lieutenant Ronald Clark appeared. He looked like a man used to authority on broad shoulders, square jaw, clean uniform. He extended his hand, but Darius did not take it. You are the son, the lieutenant asked. Yes, I heard about the incident. It is under review. No, it is not. I checked the system this morning. No official report was filed. Your officer left the scene before paramedics arrived. The fall was not logged. No footage submitted. That is not a review. That is a cover-up, Lieutenant. Clark's expression shifted slightly. Now, hold on. I am sure that is not the full story. Darius handed him a printed copy of the video transcript. That is your officer taking a cane from a 72-year-old woman who posed no threat and knocking her to the pavement. She was in the hospital before your department even logged the stop. Clark looked at the paper, then back at Darius. We will look into it if you would like to file a formal complaint. I do not file complaints, Darius said flatly. I document evidence. There was a pause. Clark's tone got firmer. Look, I get that you are upset, but barging in here is not how this works. If you have concerns, there is a process. Darius smiled. Just barely. Let me tell you something, Lieutenant. I have sat across tables from warlords, watched grown men lie with a smile while their hands were still bloody. You think I do not know what a cover-up smells like? Your guy thought no one would care about an old black woman with a cane. He was wrong. Clark clenched his jaw. This is not helping your case. I am not building a case. I am building pressure. Darius turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Tell Denton not to delete anything from his phone if any files go missing. I will subpoena his cloud backups personally. The room stayed silent. Until the door closed behind him. By the time Darius reached his truck, he had already texted the video to 4 different encrypted drives and 2 lawyers he trusted. But the visit was not just to make noise, it was to let them know he was watching. And he was not alone. By mid-afternoon, Darius was back at the hospital, sitting by his mother's bedside as she dozed. He kept the blinds half closed outside. The sun glared against the windows, but his focus stayed on his phone. He had already mapped out the call logs from the officers on scene. One of them had texted twice right after the incident, once to a supervisor and once to a private number. Darius did not recognize he would find out who it belonged to. Soon, around 3:12 p.m. A knock came at the door. It was a woman, short, sharp eyes, hair pulled into a tight bun. Mr. Baines. Yes, I am. Sergeant Kristen Fields, Internal Affairs. Darius stood. She offered her hand. This time he shook it, but briefly. I am conducting a preliminary review. Just wanted to touch base and check on your mother. She is sleeping. I will not take long, Fields said, stepping inside anyway. I have been assigned to make sense of what happened, and I want you to know. You here for accountability? Darius asked. She looked at him. I am here to follow procedure. Then we are not talking. She blinked. Excuse me, I do not have faith in your procedures, he said calmly. The officer who put my mother in this bed was protected by those same procedures just a year ago. I have seen his prior record look. Mr. Baines, I understand you are angry. I am not angry, he cut in. I am informed she shifted. There is a way to handle this. Filing a complaint, cooperating with an internal review. That is how this gets resolved. He stepped a little closer, lowering his voice. No, Sergeant. That is how this gets buried. He walks with a slap on the wrist. Paperwork gets lost, and in 6 months, he is pulling over someone else's mother. Fields did not respond. Not right away, then she said. You are not wrong, but there is still a process I have to follow. Darius nodded. You do what you have to. I will do the same as she left. Loretta stirred that a cop. Yeah, Darius replied. She mean well. I think so. Think that matters. No, he said quietly. Not anymore outside the hospital. Darius Baines parked himself in a back booth at Miller's Cafe. Small, dusty place. Not many people that afternoon. He opened his laptop and started pulling documents, not from public servers, but from a private archive one he had built over time, after seeing too many incidents like this. The badge records, arrest, discrepancies, internal transfers. He linked them all, and then he sent an email. Subject line, Incident 9. 27 Saints. Mark BPD South Precinct, excessive force attached. Video transcribed officer records. Timeline, he sent it to 3 news desks, 1 local, 2 national. He did not include his name. Then he called someone he had not spoken to in 5 years. A voice answered on the second ring. Darius, I need eyes on Birmingham. The voice on the other end chuckled softly. Still short on small talk, I see. Still do not have time for it. Darius replied. Can you help? You know, I can. You remember Galloway. Photographic memory. I need him, and I need Terrell. You know what kind of thing I am dealing with? The voice grew quiet. How soon now? Where is your mother recovering? She is strong. Good, click by nightfall. Galloway and Terrell were on the road from Tallahassee and Chattanooga, respectively. They were not military anymore, not in uniform, but their skills never left. Galloway handled comms and legal. Terrell worked in tech and records. Extraction, Darius did not need muscle, he needed reach. He sat outside the hospital that night and looked out at the streetlights blinking over tired storefronts and fading billboards. This was not about taking over a city. He was not trying to burn anything down. He just wanted accountability. But what he also knew, and what the city had not figured out yet, was that silence only works when no one is listening. And now people were starting to listen. But it was not just the public watching anymore. There were eyes inside the department starting to shift too. Galloway did not knock when he arrived. He never did. Darius opened the door to his motel room and stepped aside without a word. Galloway walked in carrying a tan canvas satchel, a slight limp in his left leg. From a break that never fully healed, he looked older now, crow's feet, deeper hair, a little thinner, but his mind was just as sharp as the day they ran missions through Jordan together. "You look exactly the same," Galloway said, setting the bag down. "You do not," Darius replied, pulling up a chair. "Terrell," Darius asked about 30 minutes out, he is bringing the gear." Darius nodded, then slid over a folder. "That's the officer Alan Denton got pushed through a fast-track academy. Daddy's cousin runs procurement in the county, got written up last year for manhandling a 14-year-old. I lost the footage. Galloway read quickly. "Jesus, he is not the only one." Darius Baines added, "There is a pattern of this precinct burying use of force incidents. I have mapped 5. In the last year alone, mostly older folks, black poor, no legal backup." Galloway looked up, "and now they messed with Loretta. That was their mistake." By the time Terrell arrived, it was just after 9 p.m. He did not waste time unpacking, pulled out 2 laptops, a portable scanner, and a modified Wi-Fi interceptor that fit inside a shoebox. He grinned as he set it on the table. "Let's see what these clowns have been hiding." Darius pointed at the wall. "PD's internal network is 5 blocks that way. Keep it clean, no active interference, just listening." "Copy that," Terrell said, already typing. "Once we ID the chain of command," Galloway added. "We can push quietly, get people talking, make them nervous enough to leak without being asked." Darius leaned back already. "Started that footage went out last night." "Public's reacting, but slow. They are testing the waters." "They always do," Galloway said, "till it hits the right nerve while they worked." Loretta sat alone at the hospital watching the local news. Nothing on the broadcast yet, but she knew it was coming. She had seen the look in Darius's eyes that morning. It was the same one he wore at his father's funeral. Quiet strength. Yes, but something colder just beneath the surface at 10:45 p.m. Darius and the team found something internal. Messages, one flagged as confidential priority, sent from the precinct's deputy chief to a small group of officers, it read. "Do not share body cam. Do not comment publicly. Narrative will be handled. Remind all personnel to coordinate statements if contacted by press." Galloway sat back, disgusted. "They are circling wagons," Darius replied. "Then we set fire to the wagons. Over the next hour they built a chain, not of accusations but evidence, each officer who received the message. Their connection to previous complaints, the clerk who adjusted timestamps, the medic, who accidentally omitted head trauma from Loretta's ER report. It was all there, nothing speculative, just cold, verifiable facts at midnight." Darius sent another message, this time to a contact who owed him a favor from back in Kandahar. Not law enforcement, not a politician, a journalist, the kind who did not flinch when the story was ugly. He attached the chain of messages, the video, the history of suppression. The reply came 4 minutes later. "I will be on the 600 a.m. flight." Darius closed the laptop. "They wanted quiet," he said. "We will give them a crowd the next morning." Posters began showing up around the city. Black and white printouts with a screenshot from the video. Loretta lying on the pavement above it. "Ask Birmingham PD why this woman is in the hospital underneath." Had justice for Loretta, they were not professionally made. They were not flashy, but they were everywhere, taped to bus stops, tacked to barbershop windows, slid under windshield wipers in grocery store lots. The department had no official comment, and that silence. That is what made people start asking questions, but this was not just a PR storm brewing, it was the start of a breakdown from the inside. By noon that day, the phones at Birmingham PD were not just ringing, they were lighting up, citizens calling in, community leaders demanding a press conference, reporters knocking on the door asking for records, and someone inside the department had finally slipped a copy of Denton's original incident report. The one supposedly never filed custard in Galloway's inbox through a secure drop. No sender listed, but it was real typed out. Timestamp: the same night Loretta hit the pavement. It said she was verbally aggressive, refused lawful instruction, and initiated physical interference with the officer's space. Terrell read it aloud and looked disgusted. She is 5 feet 2 inches and 72 years old. Her interference was standing still with a cane. "They are building a defense," Galloway said. "Classic overreach. They will say she was obstructing, trying to provoke. Then they will pull the mental health card." Darius barely reacted, just stared at the file like he was looking through it. He reached for his phone. This time, he did not call anyone from the past. He called someone from Loretta's present, the nurse on duty the night she was brought in. "Miss Wanda Brooks, this is Darius Baines." "Oh yes, baby. Your mama is doing okay. She ate a little bit this morning. I know I need a favor. You remember how she was when they wheeled her in? She was groggy. Kept asking for you. Was she aggressive? Combative?" Wanda sounded confused. "No. Lord, no. She was scared. Her blood pressure was sky high. Could not even sit upright." "Could you say that on record?" There was a pause. "You're going to put me in trouble. No, I am going to put the people who hurt my mother in trouble. I just need your voice. One sentence, that is all." Another pause. Then a sigh. "Okay, baby. I will say it by evening." Darius had audio from Wanda, 3 affidavits from church members who witnessed the incident, and a timeline that proved Denton had already drawn his baton before Loretta said a single word. Meanwhile, outside the precinct, a small crowd began to gather. Not shouting, just standing, holding signs with Loretta's photo, some holding canes in quiet solidarity. A young officer inside the building whispered to his partner. "Who is she?" The partner shrugged. "Just some lady but her kid, I heard. He used to be special ops. Now he has people crawling through our records that night. A local reporter named Laura Torres went live from the sidewalk. She did not scream or dramatize. She just told the truth. An elderly woman injured at a traffic stop, a department slow to respond, and a son who was not letting it go. By 10 p.m. it hit regional news, then Reddit, then a legal blog that specialized in police misconduct cases, and that is when things started cracking from the inside. Anonymous emails rolled in from dispatchers, from former officers, from clerks. One said, "Look into the logs from September 12th. 2 other complaints about Denton, both sealed. Another. There is bodycam footage from that night. They are holding it until IA clears a statement." The most shocking came from a woman only identified as M. She said she was once engaged to a patrol sergeant. She still had his tablet from their time living together, and the tablet had synced with the department cloud. She had seen the raw video. It showed the moment Denton took Loretta's cane. It showed her fall, somehow, not resisting, not interfering, just standing and then bleeding. She offered to hand it over. No money, no reward, just one condition. "I want the world to know what he did." Terrell met her in a public park during daylight. She brought the tablet in a shopping bag with no charger, no case. She said, "Tell that woman, I am sorry, no one stepped in." He nodded. "You just did." Back in the motel room, they played the footage. It was clear, no edits, no cuts, audio intact. Darius watched it once. Then again. Then he clicked upload and sent it to 6 journalists, 1 from Alabama, 1 from Texas, 4 from outlets that never looked away when things got hard. 2 hours later, the video was live. It got 315,000 views in 4 hours, and suddenly people did not just care. They were angry, but anger alone was not enough. It was time to bring the truth into the building where it started. The next morning, the front doors of the Birmingham Police Department did not open to their usual trickle of early complaints and routine paperwork. They opened to a press truck, a cluster of folding chairs, and a growing crowd at 8. Darius walked into the station with 2 things. A hard drive and a printed folder of witness statements. He was not there to plead. He was not there to threaten. He was there to give them a choice. Lieutenant Clark met him in the hallway, flanked by a public relations officer who looked like she had not slept. Mr. Baines, now is not really the time, but, It is exactly the time, Darius interrupted. Where is your chief? He is not in today. Then you are him for now. Clark crossed his arms. We are already reviewing everything. The footage, the report. Darius cut him off again. I have the raw footage. I have multiple eyewitnesses, and I have a federal attorney in my back pocket waiting to light this department up if you all try to hide one more file. Clark glanced toward the glass doors. Protesters were holding signs. A few were filming. You want to talk privately? Clark asked. No, Darius said. I want you to see this with your own eyes. He handed over the drive. A few minutes later, they were seated in a small conference room, the PR officer nervously typing on a laptop, the drive plugged into the wall-mounted monitor. The room went quiet as the video played. They saw it all clear as day. Loretta Baines standing quietly. Alan Denton agitated his hands, snatching her cane, her body collapsing like a puppet whose strings had been cut, her head striking the curb. No resistance, no yelling, no crime. Just a 72-year-old woman treated like she was disposable. When the screen went black, no one spoke for a moment. Then Darius said, Your officer lied. Your report is fiction, and your department tried to bury a woman who spent her entire life teaching third graders and singing in the church choir. The PR officer started to speak. Clark raised a hand to silence her. You are right, Clark said, quiet but clear. There is no defending what I just saw. Darius leaned forward. Then do not, Clark sighed. What do you want? I want Officer Denton suspended without pay, pending full investigation. I want a public apology to my mother, not a press release, a face-to-face apology. I want the body cam footage released, and I want your department to reopen every use of force case that has been sealed in the last 4 years. The PR officer nearly choked. That is not how it works. Darius turned to her. That is how it is going to work. Clark rubbed his face. He looked tired, not just from the situation, from carrying something he probably knew had been rotten for longer than he cared to admit. You will get your apology, he said. I will suspend Denton today. The rest I need time. You have 24 hours, Darius said. After that, the footage hits national, syndication, and a civil rights lawyer with teeth files a federal claim. Clark did not respond. He just nodded. Darius stood. Appreciate your time, Lieutenant. Let's not waste any more of it. He left without shaking hands. Outside, he did not address the crowd. He did not raise his voice or make a statement. He just walked straight to the sidewalk where his mother had fallen and stood there, quiet still. Reporters shouted questions. People tried to hand him flyers, hug him, ask him what was next. He said nothing inside the department. Clark sat back down, head in his hands. He knew this was not over, not even close by that evening. The suspension was announced. The department confirmed an internal investigation into procedural failures. A spokesperson admitted the incident did not meet the standards expected of our officers, but the apology that was what mattered most to Loretta. It happened just after sundown. Denton, clearly nervous, clearly coached, stood in her hospital room beside 2 other officers and read from a written statement. I am sorry for the harm caused, Mrs. Baines. It was never my intention. Loretta stared at him for a long time. Then she said, Yeah, you may not have meant to hurt me, but you still did. He looked away. She did not, but Darius was not done yet, because now that the truth was out, it was time to make sure it never got buried again. The apology did not end anything. It only confirmed what everyone had seen with their own eyes, that an innocent woman had been harmed, and the system had tried to hide it. The next morning, local headlines read, Officers suspended after elderly woman injured during stop. but the words felt hollow. There was no mention of the cover-up. No accountability for the supervisor who approved the false report. No explanation for why the body cam footage had been hidden in the first place. Darius sat beside Loretta's hospital bed, her hand resting in his. "You sure you want to go public with the rest of it?" she asked, voice low. He nodded. "They still think this will blow. Over that people will forget." Loretta gave a faint smile. "You are your father's son." He did not smile back. He was already focused on what had to come next. By that afternoon, Galloway had compiled a comprehensive dossier, a timeline of 5 previous excessive force cases buried under bureaucracy. Each one followed the same pattern. Physical injury, no formal charges filed, body cam footage, withheld complaints marked as unsubstantiated, different victims, same department, same outcome. But this time there was a name the city could not ignore. Loretta Baines Darius brought the document straight to City Hall. He did not schedule a meeting. He walked right in security, tried to stop him, but a councilwoman named Dr. Eliza Turner recognized him and intervened. "Let him speak," she said. "Everyone else is talking about him. We might as well hear from the source in the small meeting chamber." Darius laid everything out, calm, clear, no speeches, just facts. "You have a department that protects itself at the expense of the people it is sworn to serve," he said. "This is not about one officer. It is about an entire culture." One councilman shifted in his seat. "You are asking us to do what? Fire half the precinct?" "No," Darius said. "I am asking you to investigate them and to stop pretending that silence is neutrality." Councilwoman Turner leaned forward. "What happens if we do not?" Darius did not blink. "Then we go bigger. Federal complaint, national media, civil lawsuits from every buried victim. I can find, and believe me, I will find them." There was no bravado in his voice, just certainty. Later that evening, while city officials debated behind closed doors, something happened outside the building that no one expected. A crowd had gathered on the steps, not huge but steady. Men and women of all ages, quiet, holding candles, holding signs, some holding copies of Loretta's photo, others holding photos of their own mothers. At the center stood Loretta herself, supported on both sides by church friends, her cane in one hand, her purse in the other. She spoke softly, but every word carried. "I am not the first person. This happened too. I may not even be the last. But if standing here makes the next woman safer, then I will stand until my legs give out." Applause followed, gentle but firm. No chants, no shouting, just people who had had enough. The next day, under mounting pressure, the police chief announced his resignation. 3 officers, including Denton's direct supervisor, were placed on administrative leave. An independent review board was convened to audit. Past misconduct cases, the city tried to frame it as accountability. Darius knew better. It was survival. In the motel room later that night, Galloway looked over at him. "You could have gone nuclear, burn them down publicly." "I did not need to," Darius said. "The truth was louder than I will ever be." Terrell leaned back in his chair. "So you're done?" Darius stared out the window at the lights flickering across the street. "No. Just finished the first part because he was not here for vengeance. He never had been. He was here for change. And change did not end with one apology or one resignation. It started there, but sometimes after the storm clears, you learn who really stood with you and who was just waiting for the noise to pass. 3 weeks later, Loretta Baines stepped out of the hospital on her own 2 feet. No fanfare, no press, just the soft shuffle of her walking shoes and the tap of her cane against the concrete as she made her way to the passenger side of Darius's truck. She gripped the door with one hand, looked up at her son and said, "Help me up." Darius reached down, not as a soldier, not as a fighter, just as a son. She settled into the seat, slowly exhaling as she leaned back. You good? He asked. I am better than I was, she answered. That is all I need to be right now. The ride home was quiet, familiar. Streets, familiar faces. People waved. Not all of them knew the full story, but they knew enough. And that was new before Loretta had just been. Miss Baines, the Sunday school teacher, the retired third grade instructor who baked peach cobbler for funerals and never missed choir rehearsal. Now people looked at her differently, with reverence, some with guilt, and a few with that quiet kind of respect that does not need words. When they pulled into the driveway of her small yellow house, the same house she had lived in since 1986, she took a long look before getting out. I did not do that, Darius said, noticing her glance at the tidy yard. I know you did not, she replied. There was a note pinned to the mailbox with a magnet shaped like a dove for Miss Loretta. Thank you for standing tall, even when on the ground. TG, Loretta smiled faintly. That is. Thelma's handwriting inside, everything was just as she left it. But somehow warmer. A few neighbors had been stopping by while she recovered meals stocked in the freezer. Church bulletins stacked neatly by the phone. Someone had even replaced the batteries in her wall clock. Darius helped her sit on the sofa and pulled up a chair. You gonna stay a while? She asked him. He nodded, yeah. She looked over at him. You always disappear after things calm down, like you are afraid of peace. I am not afraid, he said. Just do not always recognize it. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Loretta said, When your father passed, I worried you would never come back to yourself, that you would stay out there, always chasing shadows. I tried, Darius admitted, but they follow you home either way. She nodded slowly. Not all shadows are bad. Some just remind you where the light is later that day. The doorbell rang. It was Reverend Carl Turner holding a folder. I thought you might want this, he said. Minutes from the church board meeting. They want to name the reading room after you. Loretta chuckled. They better wait till I am dead. Reverend? Turner smiled. You do not get to decide that. As he turned to leave, he looked at Darius. She raised you right. Darius did not say anything. Just gave a small, silent nod that night as the sun dipped low, casting soft gold through the lace curtains. Loretta stood on her porch with her cane in one hand and a warm blanket around her shoulders. A teenager walked by on the sidewalk, one of the kids who used to mow lawns for spare change. He stopped and said, You feeling okay, Miss Loretta? She smiled. I am still here. The boy nodded. Good. Then he walked on. Darius watched from the doorway. He did not say anything. He just let her be. Because sometimes healing is not loud. It is not about grand gestures or big changes. Sometimes it is just a quiet day, a steady cane, a hot meal, a look in someone's eyes that says, We see you now. But even as things settled, Darius knew that peace had to be protected, because silence is not safety, and quiet does not always mean justice. 6 weeks after Loretta's fall, the noise had mostly faded. The press moved on. The hashtag stopped trending. The city released a 5-page progress report, promising reforms, training modules, and more transparency. But Darius knew how that worked. Promises did not fix people. Systems did not fix themselves. It always came back to pressure and presence. He sat on the front porch of his mother's house, watching the wind shift through the trees. A notebook lay open on his lap, half filled with scribbled names, timestamps, and street corners from other cases he had uncovered. Since everything happened, he was not trying to be a hero. He was just paying attention. Loretta came outside with 2 mugs of coffee, handed him. One, They still calling you? She asked. Some, he said. lawyers, journalists, a few families, one woman's daughter lost hearing in one ear. After a cop slammed her head into a window. Never got an apology. Loretta sat down beside him. You going to help her? I already sent her everything I had. She nodded. That is good. Just remember to rest, too. He did not answer right away. Then I will, just not yet. Loretta looked out toward the street. It is strange, she said, how fast the world forgets. They did not forget you, Darius replied. No, but I was lucky. Some folks do not have sons who know how to fight. How? Without throwing punches, he looked over at her. You were not lucky. You were right. She did not respond later that afternoon. They visited the church for the first time since the incident. It was a regular Sunday, modest turnout. Mostly older folks. Reverend Turner greeted them at the door and walked Loretta to her seat. Personally, as Darius stood in the back, a few people approached quietly, thanking him not just for his mother, but for making them feel less invisible. After the service, a woman named Bernice Hill pulled him aside. She was in her 60s, held her purse like it contained something fragile. I saw the way you handled all that, she said with grace, with purpose. He did not know what to say. You reminded me that not all power looks like shouting, she continued. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like watching, like refusing to be pushed. Darius finally spoke. I did not want a spotlight. I know, she said, that is what made people trust you back home. Loretta sat down with a stack of letters from strangers across the country. Some just sent prayers, others shared their own stories. All of them signed their names like they were asking to be counted. She read each one slowly out loud, because sometimes being heard is the first step toward being whole. That night, Darius walked through the neighborhood. The sky was dark, but the air was calm. A few porch lights glowed like sentinels on watch. He stopped under the street lamp near the corner store and stood there for a while. He thought about what could have happened, what almost happened. He thought about how one action, one shove, one lie, one voice can ripple far beyond the moment it was made. And he thought about Loretta, the way she stood, the way she did not yell, the way she never asked for anything but a phone call. That single call had changed everything, because justice does not always come through courts or headlines. Sometimes it starts with a quiet voice saying, "No more." This story was not about revenge. It was not about power. It was about the value of one woman's life, the value of a son's refusal to look the other way, the value of pushing back when the world assumes you will stay quiet. And maybe, most of all, it was about this truth. You do not have to be loud to be heard. You do not have to fight with fists to leave a mark. And you do not have to wear a uniform to protect the people you love. So if you are watching this and you are tired, if you are angry, if you are wondering whether it is worth it to speak up when the system seems too big, let Loretta remind you, one voice can be enough, especially when that voice is telling the truth. Do not stay quiet. Someone's listening.